Welcome back to iHeartRadio So Bad It's Good. Today we have a returning guest, and I couldn't be more thrilled. Even though this is a very sensitive topic, I believe our guest handles this with such grace and aplomb, and it is such an important topic. You as moms and dads of their children, this is a show that you need to be aware of. The things that are happening with online sex abuse is so important. It's very scary to talk about and to think about, but it's the reality of the situation out there in America today. And our next guest in a TV show that is having its second season, I'm so thrilled it is having its second season. You can find it on ID and Discovery. The show is called Undercover Underage, Season 2. It is premiering Monday, May 1st. And our guest started a thing called SOSA, which is a nonprofit safe from online sex abuse. And this show kind of takes you into capturing sexual predators. And they do it in a very interesting way, which I'm going to walk through that with our guest. Her name is Roo Powell, and she's been here once before, but she is back today. Thank you so much for being here today, Roo.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you didn't get to hear when I bragged about all of your accomplishments, but this is such an intense subject matter. It's not like something that you ever feel comfortable, I would imagine, bragging about, because this is such important work.
Oh, I ruin every birthday party I go to. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't, if I'm in like new company or polite company, I generally don't say what I do. I'm just like, oh, I'm in the nonprofit sector, and kind of leave it as that, because, you know, it's dark stuff. So yeah, I try not to traumatize every person I meet.
Well, I mean, but I will say, I watched the first 2 episodes of the second season, and I had watched all the episodes of the first season, and it immediately took me back to that place. It is a very tense show to watch, and I will say, give credit to the editors, to the music, to your team of people. It tells a very important story, and it tells it with this really kind of amazing pacing, but it really puts you in that. And I thought last time, I just can't imagine you or your team living in that space and having such real consequences if you guys fail in your work.
Yeah, it is harrowing, largely because we all know what's on the line. So we do these decoy sprints even if they're not being televised. We did a short one back in February, and it was me and one person on our team. We had we received a $5,000 grant, and we wanted to show them what we could do with $5,000. So we went to another city, and we were there for 4 days, and we had 5 arrests in 4 days, and then, pending arrests. And so, 2 more arrests have happened since. And, when you're in the middle of it, when you're in the midst of it, it's all you can think about. And, you kind of have to remind yourself that there's good stuff happening in the world too.
Yeah, I mean, 5 arrests in 4, that's insane. And then this season, it all takes place, I believe, is it Oklahoma? Is that?
Mm-hmm. It's in Canadian County, Oklahoma. And, it's interesting because, in comparison to season one happened mostly in Connecticut, and different states have different laws. So there are different sex abuse laws in different states, different grooming statutes, different ages of consent. So that's why it's really important for us to work with law enforcement in that area, because there are different rules of engagement. There are different, needs for prosecution.
Now, I noticed in the first season, you were putting yourself directly as, I mean, you do look so young. You were putting yourself as the decoy a lot of the times. And what you notice in the first episode of this season, you are using other people that you work with as the decoy. And, there is one girl in the first episode into the second that I believe she's portraying a 12-year-old, and she does it so well. The nervousness and the innocence I mean, how do you even go about, I mean, like, I grew up as an actor. How do you go about casting this? It is such dark material. I mean, a man exposes himself. By the way, this is all blurred out, folks. Right. But he exposes himself on it, and it's like, how do you know that this is the right person that can pull this off?
Well, the nerves are real every time we do it. If she's pretending to be nervous, like that's one thing that we can lean into, because, usually a young girl is nervous talking to a stranger online for the first time, and we're nervous in the moment for other reasons. We do use a lot of digital editing to make ourselves look younger, and that definitely helps, because the entire time we're talking with an ACM, an adult contacting a minor, the concern is, am I going to blow it? Is he going to look at me and be like, you have an AARP card, you're definitely an adult.
Jeez.
And the two people that we cast actors. Like we had actors come on, and they're trained, and they have acting resumes, and we really had to go through like, this is what this is about. This is what you'd be portraying. Are you okay with this? And even I felt very protective of them because I know what it's like doing this, and I'm essentially asking these young people like, hey, do you want to come along and be traumatized together?
That's what it is.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, I definitely deal with feelings about that. And so we put some rules into place. Like you'll never see a video call where I'm not right there, right now.
Yeah, you guys, she is right there. She has like a whiteboard she's writing on, like giving notes and things like that. And it kind of adds to that intensity. But it is weird. I want to explain the show a little bit for people that haven't watched. It is such a dark topic, but it's like a Mission Impossible team. Like there's somebody on social media, there's somebody's dressing the room, there's a whole team of people that is gathered in this house with the sole purpose of catching these predators. And it is taking it a step way beyond what like the old days of To Catch a Predator, all of those Dateline NBC shows. This is the next evolution because social media and the internet didn't exist the way it does now. And you guys are on the cutting edge, it seems like, of that. Is it shocking to you between the first and the second season? Have you noticed any kind of difference in online predators in the last couple of years? Is it changing in any way?
Well, it definitely changed over the course of the pandemic. And the reason why is because so many kids moved to being heavily online because of school. And then so many predators were working from home, and they all of a sudden have more time and access. So there was definitely an uptick over the course of the pandemic. Between season 1 and season 2, it's not really that so much has changed. It's just that it's new stories to add to the fold. New horrors to be seen, to be honest. You'll see that in season 2. So we have this 12-year-old decoy, and there are levels of sophistication, and we find that the people that are the most insidious are very, very careful, and they're successful because they've been so careful for so long. And those are the cases that really kind of keep me up at night, because we need to get this person. We know that they're bad. They're reaching out to multiple of our decoys. They're very active online, but they're not telling us the truth about anything. We end up getting one guy who is, he shows up to a meet with a 12-year-old, and he has a stuffed animal on the front seat for her. And then, you find out that he has a 12-year-old daughter of his own. And then you also find out that he's a foster parent. And it's just like, it's one horror after another, because especially because you kind of assume that, like, we watch CSI or Law and Order, and a lot of times predators look like bad guys. They look like creepy guys in a basement, the troll under the bridge. But then there's some of these that are very nice dads, family men. They are foster parents. They have respected jobs in society. They are good communicators. They're conventionally attractive. They're the guy behind us in Trader Joe's. And I think that what is probably going to be shocking for viewers is, one, how normal a lot of them seem, but then two, how insidious it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine the people that are the most successful at this, which is the last thing you want to be successful at, are very charming, average people that you wouldn't pull out of a lineup, and that's how they're able to like keep going. And that's why work like yours is so important, because this stuff needs to come to light, and parents need to be very aware how much is happening out there and online. Is that part of the attraction of doing a show like this? Is that, I mean, I would imagine the number one is that you get to share your story and show the reality of what is going on out there for parents.
I mean, it's the only reason why I said yes to it. When the production company first approached, I was like, oh, the idea of being on television or having someone to follow us around, that feels really weird. But then they said, imagine reaching 1 million people per week. And this really does feel like something that there's not a ton of awareness about, because, you and I did not have Snapchat when we were in high school. Like, our parents were not worried about us being on Snapchat in high school and meeting some stranger. And now this is the wild, wild west. So the idea of being able to reach so many people and raise awareness in order to kind of inspire a society to protect kids together is really wonderful. And in fact, I love that a lot of parents will watch this show with their teens.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think this is like that? I think we had talked about this last time, and I know you have your own family, but is this something that you would recommend parents watching with their kids to make them aware really of what is the reality that's out there right now?
Yeah, your mileage may vary depending on like what you are okay with your kids watching. I mean, if your kids watch Marvel movies, I think it's okay for them to watch Undercover Underage. It really depends. I have, two of my teenagers have watched at least a couple episodes. It's a little bit different because I feel weird because it's mom they're watching. But ultimately, I do think it is a really powerful tool for starting those conversations about online safety, because there seems to be like such a divide. And when I talk to parents, I'm like, hey, if your kid's on TikTok, like just get TikTok and poke around and just get an idea of what it's like. If your kid's on Snapchat, try using Snapchat, then you can understand. And if it's less foreign to you, then it's less scary. It's less like the big bad guy. And these are conversations that you can have with your kids. And I think the reason why that's also so important is because if something happens, a kid needs to be able to go to someone without feeling like they're going to be shamed and blamed.
Exactly. This does need to be brought out in the light and doesn't need to be as taboo as I think we make it as a society, because it is the reality of what is out there right now. So this show treats it as a very real reality. And the more we do talk about it, I think the more kids will wind up being safer. But yeah, there is that secret shame that a lot of kids have if they do get themselves into a situation like this because they don't know.
Yeah, and I remember I was speaking to, because I often speak to parents and they'll usually call if there's like some sort of crisis. But I talked to one parent and she said, and he instructed her to delete photos and she did that and I've lost trust in her. And, she's talking about a very young girl, like, under 12. And I said, if you reframe that and instead of, looking at it like your child broke your trust, could it be that this very manipulative man, this criminal, coerced your kid into doing something because he's been grooming her? And I think that shift in thinking, because of course parents are upset, like, what were you doing? What were you thinking? How could you do this? But it's not about being a good kid or like a smart kid. It's just about, you're a kid on the internet and, their frontal lobe isn't fully formed yet. And these guys are so aggressive. I mean, I hope that Undercover Underage highlights just how aggressive and how sneaky and how, just how insidious all of it is.
But also how good they are at doing what they do, is that they, the different tactics that they, like you had mentioned earlier, that they employ is that they are assuming that they're going to get 30 billion different questions and they're going to get the trust of somebody that's very, very young. When you did the second season, signing up for that, I mean, and I thought the first two episodes, it really does this great job of not sensationalizing any of this, telling kind of the hard truth, but at the same time, this is a show that I think is, I mean, it really does move along. And at the end of the first episode, you guys out there of the second season, ends with this guy singing, and it is so eerie because the guy, the predator, is singing to the underage girl, and it is so just eerie, and it gives you this like really horrific feeling. But through all of this, you were able to make how many arrests this season? It was like, I read the figure and it was insane.
Yes. So there were some arrests that were, that aren't being, I think on the show, I think you might see, I want to say 15 arrests, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll look that up. But we had more arrests that, weren't necessarily on camera, or a lot of cases that were extradited if they weren't in Oklahoma.
So so great things are coming from this show, even without people watching it. Real like consequences are being had out there. Has anybody, I mean, this would sound so bizarre, but after the first season, were you getting recognized at all? Were you like, I mean, or is that kind of, people probably wouldn't come up to you about that. Like, I saw you on Undercover Underage.
Well, I mean, especially online with perpetrators, nobody recognized me. I always say that, like, even if 100,000 predators watch the show, there are 100,000 predators that haven't watched the show, and more than that. The only time I got recognized was, I think, like at a nail salon, and I got a DM on Instagram later, like, hey, are you in Oklahoma for like a thing? I'm like, no, I'm just passing through for a thing.
Oh my God. Were you getting your nails done? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You had this really amazing moment too in the one of the episodes where you do have a phone call from your daughter, and it immediately puts the audience into this reminder that you have your own family, that you do have your own, you're a mom, that and I really thought that was such a really nice moment to share, because it did remind you that, like, yeah, you have your own thing going on and you're doing that on top of this. But you even said that, having her kind of reminds you of why you do this on a daily basis.
Yeah, when I look at these decoys, realizing that they're playing the same ages as my kids, right? And sometimes that's my point of reference, like, oh, my daughter wouldn't know what that is, or yeah, my daughter definitely knows what that is. It is difficult. I choose to do this work, and I choose to, be away or help law enforcement or kind of be in this environment that can be really, frankly, awful. My kids didn't choose this. And so there's always this element of like, mom's not here because she's doing this thing. And so I always feel like they are sacrificing in a way too. The older ones, they're starting to get it now, especially as they see stuff happen online or they watch the show. But yeah, it always hits home, and it is difficult, but we do it not just for our own kids, but for the sake of all kids, right?
Well, even when the cameras are off, though, you continue to do this work. You were doing this work even before the television show. Mm-hmm. Is there any way you can share with us the inciting incident or what got you in to creating SOSA in the first place?
Yeah, there's always this question of, was I bit by a radioactive spider, or like what made me want to do this, or, what's my villain origin story? But
you're really into Marvel, by the way. I want to point out you brought up superheroes now twice in this interview.
I actually don't know the difference between DC and Marvel, and I always mix them up and I get in trouble for that. So, no, I think that a lot of us, and, a lot of women specifically, do have a story from when they were younger of what it was like to, maybe not online, but walking down the street, or going to a friend's house and some older guy maybe had a couple beers and said something, and you're only 12 years old or 13 years old, and you just feel ugh and gross and ashamed, and you don't want to tell anyone about it because it just feels, you're embarrassed. And I think that that's kind of a mild version of it, but I think that so many women know that experience. And for me, it's knowing that there are lots of kids out there that get abused online, and they don't want to tell anyone because they're too scared to, because they're too ashamed. And thinking about kids feeling isolated and feeling like they don't have anyone to talk to, and just kind of living with that shame for years, that's really what was the impetus of starting this. It's, I'm a firm believer that every kid needs someone in their corner. And how do you do that when, parents or adults don't even really know what the issue is? If somebody said to me ages ago, do you know that kids can be abused without ever being in the same room as an abuser? That would have seemed too abstract to me. Like, what do you mean? But kids are being abused, and they never even have to meet their abuser. And, it is so pervasive. And if I could hand a parent a phone and just post a picture online and show how quickly these messages come in, or how vile they get so quickly, and then you kind of have to imagine yourself being a 12-year-old and reading these messages. I have a lot of compassion for these kids that are going through this. We have lots of messages after the show came out, season 1. So many people said it wasn't until watching Undercover Underage or watching a couple episodes that I realized the abuse I went through was not my fault. And that's a big thing for us. That's enough for me, knowing that some people, they found some sort of healing and realizing that this happens, abuse is not their fault. And, they've the idea of just kind of sitting with it for years, it's heartbreaking. So
it really is.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, though, were you always the kind of person that just got things done? How did you know that this would be your life's work and you could be effective in this. Not to say this will be your life's work, but to me, this is such an amazing thing that you're doing and have done. But were you always this type of person that like you got stuff done, like you were in charge and all that stuff? Because I think this takes such a strong person to do this.
Prior to this, I've been a career-long writer, and there are certain things that really resonated with me. And so I have been in Southeast Asia with different NGOs, and I was in brothels with undercover investigators writing about sex trafficking, or I've written about like the refugee crisis, and really just I think anything where somebody is vulnerable and needs a voice, and which maybe seems like very much Save the Children, and I don't mean to sound quite like that, but no, I mean, I feel like I was always just a pretty normal, average, go to work and get things done kind of person. But this really spoke to me. And I don't think you have to be a parent to care about this. And I don't think
no, you do not. I mean, you really, I'm not I have a niece and nephew though. And my niece is 13 years old and she doesn't have Instagram yet. I'm already scared for that. And then I'm scared and she's getting taller and like I get scared for her. And I was talking to my sister about this, about how this kind of stuff happens. And she says, you have no idea, like they'll get on Discord, they'll get on all of these internet things, and they're just having full blown conversations with people. They have no idea if they're telling the truth who they are in the first place.
Oh, totally. I mean, I did this I did this session with a trust and safety team for another app, and they said, hey, we've been dealing with a lot of online predators on our app. And so of course you think like, oh, is it like a dating app? Is it some sort of like social media, like photo-based social media app? It's a coloring book app. It's an app for coloring. It's a kid's coloring book app. And so even the most innocuous, benign parts of the internet, like where, you put a coloring book app in an iPad and you hand it to a kid and, you assume that it's going to be fine. It's any place online where you can communicate with someone, somebody is going to try to use that in order to abuse a kid. I've seen it on Words with Friends. It's wild. So yeah, even when you think about like your niece and nephew and that age range is just so, it's hard already. Like being a 13-year-old girl is hard enough. And then to deal with this too is, something else. So these are all.
Yet I have no reference point. Like you said, Snapchat didn't exist when I was, Facebook barely existed. None of this existed. And we were already being warned about don't take candy from strangers, don't go to get into the unmarked van. And this is so much more extreme now, it seems like.
It's also because your parents only had to worry about the guy in the unmarked van that lived near you. And now there are all these guys in all these unmarked vans all over the world, and they can reach out to a kid at any point, right? Like,
but that's the power of this show. The power of this show, though, is that it reaches everywhere too. Is that you have to combat that with things like Undercover Underage. I think that's why this is such an important show, and it really does open that conversation. Like that's what you want is, like you said, to spark that conversation, bring it out into the light. I have two more things as we start winding down, though. I was watching on Discovery Plus like a month or so ago the Jared from Subway docu-series, I was curious because it was just so disgusting to me, so much of that. And he is in prison right now, but it was, you saw some of the legal system at play. Is there rehabilitation for these people? Do you believe in rehabilitation? And I know the show doesn't cover that, but it's just something that's on my mind after watching that documentary, because eventually he'll get out, and I hate to be this person, but I just wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him.
Yeah, I think there is, I think rehabilitation doesn't necessarily mean you also have to continue to trust that person. In fact, I do think rehabilitation can happen. Recidivism rates are really hard to track, especially because a lot of people don't report sex abuse, right? So because all of this goes underreported, how can you really accurately calculate recidivism rates? As far as rehabilitation goes, I hope so. There are people that we have caught that are serving time, 4 years, 5 years. And my biggest hope is that they are being rehabilitated and they are getting the help that they need. In fact, I hope that Undercover Underage reaches people that are either, messing around online, or they're thinking about it, or they realize they have a proclivity to harm a child. And for them to go, wait a minute, okay, I realize something is wrong here. I need to go get help. before a child is ever abused. Like that is my hope for Undercover Underage, because people ask, well, aren't you afraid predators are watching? No, I hope they do. I hope they do. And I hope that they wonder that every time they talk to a 14-year-old girl, if it's a 55-year-old dude named Don sitting in a police station, and I hope that they get help. I hope they get help and they're able to prevent that. That's a win all around.
You had mentioned earlier about the different laws in different states, and you have to deal with different ones in each place you go to. What is the next law or we need to get on the books? What is the thing that we can do as a society, or what are you pushing for next that's going to make your job that much easier?
Well, I do think, there are grooming statutes that are state by state. So, for example, I do think it should be illegal in every state for a guy to approach a 10-year-old girl for photos of her feet for lascivious reasons. Because
that's a no-brainer.
But that's not the case. It's in some places it's considered creepy, but not a crime, because he's not asking for CSAM, child sex abuse material. He's asking for photos of her feet. We know what he's doing with those photos. I think that should be a crime, certainly. I also think that the age of consent should be 18 across the board. In a lot of states, it's 16. And in most states, it's 16. But if 18 is the arbitrary age that someone is an adult and can vote and can smoke a cigarette and can, fight for our country, then that should also be the age where they decide whether or not it's okay to, date a 65-year-old or receive nudes from one, right? I can't tell you how many times we say, oh, yeah, I'm 15. Okay, well, when do you turn 16? Oh, okay, well, how many more months until you turn 16? And, just across the board, I think it would be great. That's one woman's opinion, but I would love to see the age of...
That's a good opinion. That's a good opinion. That's not that crazy. I love that you're like, that's just me being crazy, but I think that's a really great opinion to have. And I think that's why this show can do good things. Like, this show is doing good things. Did you immediately want to come back for a second season, and would you do a third?
I think that I saw the response to season 1, and I think that because we were able to really help people, even people that had just been abused. I think season 2 is going to help a lot of people. I would most likely do a season 3 if they asked, simply because I think that the more that people find out about this, the more that people are knowledgeable, then the more that we can kind of empower each other to protect all kids.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I guess in a lighter note, I asked this last time, but what are you watching or listening to pull you out of the dregs of the people that you sometimes have to work around? And I don't mean your team. Your team is amazing. Yeah. By the way, she has a whole team, like I explained earlier, you guys. It really is. They all treat it so very seriously, but it is a team job that they show on these episodes. But what do you decompress it with? We know it's not superhero movies, so what is it?
I watch a lot of stand-up comedy, and and I've become a full-fledged cat lady. It's just one cat, but I'm super into her. So it's just like me and my cat, and sometimes SNL, and that's where I've been.
Okay, that's good. That's good. You guys, the show Undercover Underage, May 1st. It is on ID, but it is also going to be streaming the same day on Discovery Plus. I think this is a very important show. I think this does spurn conversation. I also want to emphasize this does not sensationalize this. This brings this stuff out into the light, but it is a highly watchable show. It moves at a certain clip. The editing is really tight. The music is very intense, and the subject matter, of course, is very intense. But you really do get a sense from you and your team that you are fundamentally good people doing good things, and that's why I think this show works. I would not recommend this if I did not think that it sensationalized this or it didn't work. I think this is a very important show, and I hope you support this. You might not be able to binge this show because it is intense, but it is on once a week, and you can stream it. You can watch it on ID. But I think Roo Powell and her team are doing such amazing work, and it really does give me hope for the future that there's people out there like you guys doing this. So thank you so much. Is there any way that the audience can support you besides this show? How do we get involved if we need to?
Yes. Well, SOSA we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We are we work very efficiently on a shoestring budget. And so if your listeners are the type of people that enjoy giving to nonprofits, I promise we use that money to the best of our abilities. And again, like we translated $5,000 into 6 arrests. So our track record's pretty good. We're also on social if you'd like to say hello. We also sometimes do calls for volunteers, and that is a really nice way for some people to it's nice to offer people something to be a part of that maybe heals part of something that they might have experienced when they were younger.
Oh, and finally, I just now thinking about what you said earlier. What was the audition process like for the new decoys? Because you said they are actors. I mean, were you working with them individually, having to like warn them what they're going to experience and stuff like that? Because, like I said, I was in like The Office and How I Met Your Mother, and that's way different auditioning than what I expect this is. I mean, what is that audition process like?
Yeah, so we had a casting director handling like the original, like the initial process, and then I would go in and go, okay, look, this is what it's like. You can totally say no, but the people that we talked, and plenty of people said, I can't do this. And in fact, when we hire at SOSA, plenty of people are like, you know what, I did the interview, I love what you guys are doing, I just cannot be around this material every single day.
Of course.
Which we totally respect. And there are some that were just like, no, I'm in it, I want to help. Even just forget all the work that we do aside. From an acting perspective, like they're like, this is a great opportunity to this is an amazing role to play. It was. I'm sure it's not the usual audition process, but it was. They were amazing.
Yeah, no, the first 2 episodes, you guys, I was blown away by the decoy. So it really, amazing work, Roo. So great to talk to you again. Thank you for spending so much time with the audience today. And I really wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it.